This is Victor from Pentagram, tuned in to Doomed and Stoned.
First off, stage antics. You know, Bobby, he's quite the dancer. Where does he get his moves from? I mean, he's still rolling until the wheels fall off. I mean, tell me about it. What does he like to jam to in his spare time?
In his spare time, well, he and I have been together for about 35 years, for over a span of 35 years. And his mother, his mother grew up in the entertainment business. And so I think that's where he just naturally gets, his charisma and stage presence and, the whole visual thing. But he's always had that. I mean, we met in '81, and until I met him, I mean, I didn't know anything about what he was doing in the '70s or anything like that. But just from seeing the videos, when I first began to see videos, I was even that early, because on stage, sometimes you're just really not aware, of what his presence is on stage. Other than the energy, we all kind of share the energy as far as seeing it from the audience's point of view. So it's pretty cool. It's great, to have a front man who can exalt that type of energy, like an Alice Cooper or Arthur Brown or someone like that. With that's kind of stage presence. Yeah.
With the Psycho Las Vegas, I know that Bobby's a big fan of Arthur Brown. You guys are sort of gonna.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, that's to us. That's one of the highlights of the festival. Because I mean, I've never seen Arthur Brown, and frankly, I had no idea that he was still alive. I mean, or that he was, especially doing shows of any kind. So that's something I don't want to miss. So, and we all pretty much will be there for that. So that's going to be cool.
I've noticed because I got the All Your Sins, the live DVD of all the pentagram footage, and I've noticed Bobby sort of takes on the same sort of dance moves, like relentless. He's always gonna do the.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He gets a little. He kind of. Our influences as we grow up. We sort of. We subconsciously borrow little things, from our influences. And he gets a lot of his stage stuff from Iggy, as well. There's sort of some of the, weird dancing and punk kind of thing too. Yeah, right. And so we all do that, from our influences, and then hopefully as we go along, it sort of becomes we develop our own style, from those influences. Yeah.
So, I mean, I began this conversation outside, but anyone who sees Pentagram live, first things they notice the sequins, the leather, the silk. Bobby's wardrobe is, I would say, yeah, it's very infamous compared to, the t shirt and jeans sort of approach. So I wanted to ask really about his wardrobe. How conscious is he of it? How does he choose his outfits? That sort of thing.
I mean, it's just a mood thing. I think typically he's very conscious of it. It's just his style, his taste, And again, it comes from just that flamboyance and charisma, of being a natural frontman, And the whole band, comes from kind of that school of when rock and roll was in an era where obviously it's all about the music, obviously, but there's also an entertainment factor, And I think that we just kind of had this discussion last night. We've lost a lot of that, the entertainment factor of the whole of it being a total package that goes with the music, being also a visual package. And so, we've gone through a couple of decades where people tended to get away from that almost as anti-establishment, And I think a lot of it came from because of the hair metal thing in the '80s, people. So everybody wanted to go sort of anti rock and roll, but I think we lost a lot along the way, as far as that entertainment element of rock and roll that was always there, like in the late '60s and especially through the '70s, when people, there was an aura, about around rock bands.
Yeah, we've come from the arena days to, Small venues.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Alice Cooper group, the original Alice Cooper group on TV like 1972. Like Glenn Buxton and Dennis Dunaway and those guys coming out with Alice Cooper. I mean, with hair down to their waist and silver pants, and changed my life, man. And there's something to be said for when I go to see a band, I don't want the band to look like the guy standing next to me in the audience. It's just a different energy. So
Bobby keeps that alive in that sense.
Yeah, in that sense. And so I think and this era of the band, we're really we want to get back to that. We want to kind of take this era of the band back to that sort of more 70s, like, entertainment rock and roll.
I was lucky to pick up the Curious volume the first day it was released in Santa Cruz. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about some of the lyrics. Bobby says, "I hate it because I made it." And I would I'm not sure if that material is more current or if he's bringing in that 70s influence of the songwriting. But I just sort of wanted to know, after the Last Days Here documentary and with the upsurge of doom metal right now, how is that affecting that sort of underground, that sort of basement feeling that Bobby brought into like this current mainstream?
Right. Well, I mean, I think he wrote those lyrics at some point in the '90s, and I think it was around the late '90s. Yeah, and he and I weren't together at the time, so I can't honestly say, and I've never really actually spoken to him about the lyrics in depth. But I also think that the lyrics, there's sort of a double meaning there. Like, I hate it because I made it, but part of what he's talking about is he made the situation that he's in, not like making it. You know what I'm saying? Making it in the business, I mean, what we're doing now. Not that we're at the top of the ladder, in what we're doing, but as far as making it, it's been his dream his whole life, but deeper into those lyrics, he's really talking about sort of his situation, with his drug addiction and all the confusion and everything and destruction that goes along with that. And that's the thing that he made. And that's also the thing that he hates, But it's a demon that, that he continues to battle, and he probably will have to battle that the rest of his life, Just like, we all have things.
I'm about to say we all do in certain senses. Yeah. Some of us hide it a little better than others,
right. Yeah, but, when we all lay down at night within our heart of hearts, we know the battles that we're each having to fight,
So I wanted to talk about the All Your Sins DVD. I notice sometimes, even whenever I'm looking at the older footage, Bobby's vocals are still very the same. Yeah. He's still, it's almost whenever he was young, he still has the voice that he does now. Whenever, being older, and it sort of has transferred over. How do you feel that sort of captured the Pentagram essence, even to modern day performances?
Yeah, I mean, he's maintained very well. I mean, obviously, at his age and the things he's been through, I mean, he has his moments, Right now we're on the road. We've been on the road for 2 weeks with like 1 day off, but he's done very well, and a lot of times it's harder on the singer because they're using the physical part of their body rather than, we're kind of just playing instruments, but he's holding up very well is all I can say, and he credits God for that himself. He'll tell you, that he just feels blessed and that God has gotten him through the whole thing and allows him to do this, to still be going in his current state of health and things like that, and his voice holds up. I mean, we all have our nights too, where, maybe Bobby doesn't feel like he performed his best, or Pete or myself or Greg. It's the same thing, but, Bobby's instrument being his throat, so sometimes it's a little harder on him, but he's doing well.
It's It's almost like that muscle memory, no matter what, it's that important moment whenever Pentagram is playing that he puts his full focus forward, you know?
Yeah.
So, right now with the upsurge of, I wouldn't say hipster, but it's definitely sort of become a fusion away from heavy metal. So, I wanted to ask really about what sort of scene, what sort of crowds you guys are experiencing compared from the 80s and back then. Are there more merch sales? That sort of thing. How have y'all seen the difference as the years roll on?
Well, obviously the crowds are bigger. We're playing to bigger crowds. We're playing bigger venues. Um, as far as the people go, I'm not sure there's that big of a difference in the people. As far as the diehard crowd, because in the '80s and in the '90s, we there was always the diehards who were there. Um, I think metal in general has become more legit, as a genre and as a lifestyle. Even you look at, we sit here and look out the window of the bus at the front of the venue and just people's dress. In the '80s, it was a little more spotty. There would be like the more hardcore people who would dress the part of being a metal fan, but there were also lots of metal fans who just look like your average everyday person. And now you have, I think people have, I don't know, maybe less inhibited or whatever, or just that the scene is so much bigger now. So you have more of the people who go out there and get out of their whatever their lifestyle might be Monday through Friday, and or just really the diehards are the ones who live it every single day, no matter what they're doing. So, but it's great, man. We're in a place right now where we just feel really fortunate to be able to do what we're doing after so many years, and we just trying to take advantage of it and enjoy the ride.
Because we're coming from the days of the Rolodex, like reaching out to promoters, reaching out to different people, to whereas now we're globally connected. How has that affected, being able to book shows and whatnot?
That's huge. Obviously, everything that happens, is known immediately. Yeah, with the internet and Facebook and everything. So, it's the days, we used to have to make handmade flyers, and everything was word of mouth. And to get your music out there was, passing around, regenerated cassette tapes and things like that. And now, it goes around the world instantly. And there's a good, there's a lot of good in it, but there's also a lot of bad. Exactly. So you have to deal with all that because you also get like this oversaturation of with just so much art and so much contribution to it. And you eventually, have to weed out. And then, of course, you've got the people who just like want the 15 minutes of fame. So you have to sort of dig through the mire, to get to the good stuff sometimes, But you take the good, the bad with the good, and but as far as Pentagram goes, it's worked really well in our favor, because we've already laid so much groundwork over the past, 40 years, really, So we have this whole new generation of people, and to be able to be doing what we're doing and to cross over into another generation. Now, when we look out in the audience, there's people out there 15 years old, all or teenagers all the way up to 60, maybe even 70 years old, and they're all in the same room singing the same lyrics with us. So it's pretty amazing.
I would like to ask, what sort of rock concerts? I know you've been creating Pentagram's music since the early 80s. I would like to ask both about Bobby and yourself. What sort of rock concerts did you guys go to growing up? Who are your your go-tos as far as classic rock. And like what you were just saying, these younger generations, it's almost like a responsibility to bring that element to the newer crowds.
Well, we grew up with, like I said, like with Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath, of course, Blue Cheer, um, Kiss, you know. And I mean, we come from that school, Led Zeppelin, the bands that came out, not only were they great rock bands, but they were also great showmen. It was that whole it was the total package. So I mean, I just, some of my best memories of going to concerts, Ted Nugent, just wild men on stage. And being in that element back then, when you're at a concert and the lights go down, man, and you're getting ready to see something that's like bigger than life, and not just, like I said before, just a bunch of guys standing around on stage that look like the guy standing next to you. There's no, like, to me, um, there's no electricity in that. I mean, it can still be great music, but and I think that all of us in this band sort of agree, man. I mean, we want that electricity, and we want to be able to have that energy exchange with the audience, and we both feed off that. So the more energy we get from the audience, the more energy we can give back. And I think that the way rock and roll shows were had more of that element than they do now. The more modern age, where it's people tend to buck the what was considered the rock and roll establishment because for whatever reason it's
Like Ted Nugent with the shooting the flaming bow and arrow, and
that's good stuff, man. I mean, no, it's all good. It's all cool. I mean, I saw Ted Nugent like 3 times in the '70s, man. From from jumping off like stacks of Fender twin reverbs and insane volume, and obviously Kiss was amazing, man. Um, Alice Cooper, all that stuff, man. I mean, all the theatrical, parts of rock and roll, and it didn't have to go that far, even. But even just like seeing guys on stage like Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and Jethro Tull, man, Ian Anderson, who just had there was a character there.
I know. I think it was in King Diamond's description of the Abigail album. He says that audiences want to feel as though they're not safe. There's that element of danger. How would you feel like as a band, whenever you're about to go on the stage and it's sort of unpredictable how Bobby will perform? How is it for you guys?
That is what we want, man. I mean, we totally thrive on that. And, we've kind of reached this place right now, especially on this tour, where our hearts are really set on bringing that danger element back, whatever we can contribute to that, and ever how far that we can help sort of, reboot that, we're totally into that right now. And that danger element, where rock and roll it's always unsafe. There's something about it that's unsafe. It's like going to, but at the same time, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's like going. It's why people go to see horror movies. They want to have the crap scared out of them, but at the same time, they know they're going to be okay to walk out of the theater.
Like on the All Your Sins live DVD, I mean, I've seen Bobby bite the guitarist. I've seen him, just sort of like get into that element. So I would expect for you guys too, it's that sort of unexpected feeling of, all right, I'm going with it. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit here about the Last Days documentary. Bobby, he had written numerous songs. He had a dream that was dwelling within him, whenever he was, staying with his parents and, in his addiction. Would you say the same for you all in the sort of like childhood aspiration or that teenage want to just fucking get out there, and how that carries on into later age, like, Bobby still going strong. how does that fire sort of carry through the years?
I think we all share that. Um, I mean, I know I do, and I know I can safely speak for Pete and Greg as well. Pete and I have been playing together, for the past 11, 12 years or so, and when we first met, I mean, I could tell Pete had that fire too. And it's really the biggest thing in our lives, I mean, obviously there are other more important things. I mean, it's really, it comes down to it, it's just a rock band. Obviously there are more important things in life than a rock band. I mean, uh, well, yeah, I mean, well, in the overall scheme of things, what we do is really not that important, compared to, you know, to life in general, the matters of life and death and things like that. But yeah, I think that we've all pretty much dedicated our lives to what we're doing, regardless if it's on, a lower level than we are, at the level that we are, or on a bigger level. And, we all want to make it to the highest rung on the ladder. But, we're having a good time right now and just enjoying it. And like I said before, just very fortunate.
I mean, it seems, I know you said you guys are booked for the next 2 weeks and whatnot, but as from a sort of media perspective, it seems as though you guys are just sort of endless, sort of never get a break sort of thing. So, I mean, are you guys rocking until the wheels fall off? How is this going along?
Yeah, hopefully we are. I mean, we're pretty busy. We're not as busy as we could be, not as busy as I would like to be, actually. We just came off of like a 3-month break from last November, December. So this is the first. Is this the first? Yeah, this is the first leg back. For 3 months, and man, for those 3 months, I was just like, come on, March, come on, March. And so this is the last. Tonight is the last the show for this 2-week run. We go home for 12 days or so, 2 weeks, and then we go to Europe for 2 weeks. We come back from Europe, and then we're off for another 2 weeks. Then we go to the West Coast for 2 weeks, and then after that, we have a pretty big gap this summer, where typically I don't know, something fell between the cracks because usually we stay pretty busy in the summer with festivals, and so we're not doing some of the festivals this year that we would like to be doing, but. We do have a couple of things. We have the Psycho Las Vegas thing coming up in the middle of the summer. So we're going to have a couple months off in the summer, and then come around November, October, and December, we're going to be back at it again, pretty heavy, U.S. and Europe stuff. But it's good. I think we could be busier.
Any last words about maybe anything after the Curious volume?
We have talked about what we're not in depth really. We don't have any solid plans right now. We do plan on a new album, and we all have tons of ideas and riffs in our heads and things like that, and so we have talked about it. I'm not sure that we will have the time to get that done, by the end of this year, but certainly by the end of our touring season, late fall, I'm sure that by then we will kind of know what we're doing as far as early next year about getting back into the studio and getting a new album.
Is Bobby still pulling from the archive of songwriting? I mean, is it like an old, like, is it like an old journal or something that he carries around? Tell me about it.
Well, yeah, he has. Well, according to him, he's written like 450 songs, something like that. Okay. So he still pulls from that. Typically a lot of those songs, though, a lot of them are. We have to kind of take those songs, restructure a little bit, rehash, and bring them up to the standard of the band now. Say 40 years later from when they were written. And a lot of those songs tended to be just a couple of minutes in length. So we tend to maybe restructure, reformulate the idea so he doesn't lose the feeling of what he had in mind when he wrote the song, but the song also fits into what the band is now, which is much heavier, than it was then, and much more aggressive, and also doomier and all that. So yeah, and with the tones of guitar sounds and styles of who this band is. But generally, it works out to where there's a fairly even split of songwriting on the album, between Bobby, myself, and Greg. And now Pete, is the band, and he writes. So Pete came in late on Curious Volume. Basically, the album was already finished, but we're heading toward next, will be an album of hopefully, input from everybody, and I think that'll be really interesting to see how that comes out.
I know a lot of the younger crowds are still discovering Pentagram's early days of music, but even listening to the Curious Volume, I would say the music and the riffs in general are above par of what newer bands are putting out today. Yes. And so, I still have to put that ode towards Pentagram for doing such, even if, say, media wise or, maybe budget wise, promotions and whatnot, people are still focused on the early days. But I would just, like to go ahead and say that I feel that people are still drawing upon Pentagram, even today's music, to sort of rehash what they're putting out, you know. But I would say I think it's still prime material.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting, because there's a lot of bands, after 2 or 3 albums, you know, their best material is kind of used at that point. And somehow for us, we've been fortunate enough to where we just continue to draw from our influences and our lives, and it comes from just maturity as well, and the experience of having recorded a lot and things like that. But I don't know, man. We all have a lot of just one of those natural things, There's no explanation for it, really. It's not contrived in any way. It just happens.
Still drawing upon the well.
Yeah, and it just happens. There's just one of those things, There's no explanation for it, really. So.
Well, thank you so much for this interview.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it too.